Welcome to Humoranities with Sephora. Throughout Season 1, I received a good number of questions about Humoranities. I thought it would be fun to add some color to the experience of creating a podcast, so I've decided to share some stories behind the stories to help bridge the gap between Season 1 and Season 2, which arrives in late January. Be sure to stay tuned. I'm lucky to have some novice podcasters help me host this special episode. Can you guess who they are?
Origin story.
When did you start working on the podcast? What was involved?
A good 4 to 5 years ago, a handful of friends encouraged me to start a blog because they enjoyed my stories. You should write this down, Sephora. I tried, but I couldn't seem to write my stories in a way that would match the way I tell a story, my style of speaking, or the way one might enjoy hearing a story. When I wrote out my stories, I'd lose the unique energy that's expressed the first time a story is told within the context of a conversation. Usually, the events just occurred, so the enthusiasm is high and the laughter intense. The podcast is my way of capturing my thoughts and sharing the special charm of a story in a conversation with a listener. In person or on the podcast, a conversation with me is meandering at best.
When it comes to conversations with others, do you have a creative partner?
I think I spent a few years looking for a creative partner, someone to converse with where stories would just pour out of us based on the topic of the week. I shopped the podcast idea around with various friends, but then I realized that doing a podcast was my dream and not really anyone else's within my circles. It's a lot to pull off on your own, and while I was scared, I decided it was really time to give something hard like this a try. Once I knew I'd be doing the podcast solo, the next issue I had was, how do I have a conversation with myself aloud? At first, I thought, okay, let me just get on a microphone, hit record, and tell a story. I tried. It didn't work. I needed more structure for myself, otherwise, I'd get lost and nervous, even with a clear topic and notes. Then I remembered that the structure of a story is to have a proper beginning, middle, and end. That gives the storyteller some direction, and it makes it easier for a story listener to follow along. So I decided to have a larger story with a beginning, middle, and end, with small tangents in between to accommodate my natural tendency to meander. I'm so lucky because not only does my family give me a lot of material for the podcast, they're also incredibly supportive and encouraging.
What is Humoranities' audience like?
Lots of online podcast guidance suggests that you should have a podcast about something you know well and target a certain demographic or audience. As you know from my first episode, what I'm good at is not exactly a niche topic that would have a niche audience. I enjoy a lot of things, and to narrow it down to any one topic was going to be impossible for me. And I accepted that about myself in this endeavor. And so far, I've come to learn there are many people out there who are interested in a variety of topics and forms of arts and humanities. It's awesome that Humoranities is relatable and interesting to a diverse audience and not just any one type of person. I geek out over podcast and website analytics, and I'm both surprised and not surprised when I see that I have listeners in Mexico, Ireland, Kazakhstan, and even South Korea. It makes the cultural elements I talk about in my episodes resonate as truly human.
Are you interested in interviewing others or having other people on your podcast?
Absolutely. Now that season 1 is done, I have something people can listen to for a sense of what Humoranities is about. Please reach out if you or anyone you know has humorous stories to share and finds joy in the humanities. I'd love to engage in a conversation. Thank you for listening to Humoranities. Enjoying the podcast? Please take a moment to rate it. And for more musings, visit humoranities.com and be sure to follow on all social media platforms.